Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video, I will be talking to you about my first Footwear Ottoman kit. I hope you enjoy. This video is a part of the Beyond the Western Front, a collaboration between myself and 6 other channels, all about the impact of the First World War outside of Western Europe. So when you're done watching this one, be sure to check out the full playlist, linked in the description below. Before getting into the uniform I'm currently wearing, I would like to discuss a small history lesson with you guys on the modernization of the Ottoman army. Throughout the 19th century, you do see influences of French military uniforms along with German ones, and obviously the Ottomans, being the Ottomans, they had added a little bit of their own spice as well. After the 1909 revolution, the Ottoman army decided to upgrade its previously blue uniforms into a more camouflaged color, that being a khaki uniform. Obviously this khaki uniform did have variation when it comes to the actual shade of the khaki. Obviously you can probably tell that I'm kind of wearing an olive drab uniform, which again was also authentic for the period. This mostly was because of the, let's say, inferior dyeing techniques that the Ottomans were using compared to European style ones, where different batches, depending on the materials used, depending on the dye being used, resulted in different types of uniforms. If I remember correctly, around 1917, 1916 in the Middle East, there's a report of Ottoman soldiers wearing yellow uniforms. I mean, that could be because of the sun fading it or the manufacturing, but still, it is an interesting point of view to look at, where the Ottoman regulations weren't always followed when it comes to exact uniform colors. So this khaki uniform was introduced around 1909. There were some changes in 1911 where we do see the removal of breast pockets and lower pockets being kept. Obviously this was most likely done to ease up the manufacturing process. Making only 2 pockets instead of 4 is faster and cheaper compared to making 4. So obviously you do see these uniforms mostly pop out sometime around late Balkan Wars. Most of the time during the Balkan Wars you do see the 1909 regulations uniform, which has the 4-pocket ones. I do actually have a reproduction which was made from a Romanian Cold War uniform that fits the 1909 regulation, which was actually used up until 1915. So the uniform I'm wearing is the 1911 to 1915 uniform you typically see. It was obviously regulated around 1911 with the removal of the breast pockets, but in general it is the typical type of the Ottoman uniform, a simple tunic, even kind of looks like a sack coat at times. There's not really much to talk about the tunic because simplicity was the main objective when it comes to the Ottoman uniform production, due to, obviously, as I've mentioned before, inferior manufacturing techniques compared to European powers. Obviously with Ottoman uniforms you do see German and Austro-Hungarian uniforms being used by the Ottoman army, due to Germany and Austro-Hungary supplying uniforms in order to help the Ottoman war effort. Obviously these uniforms are not common, but they do pop out, and obviously they look way better than the Ottoman produced ones. The uniform also has the important thing, which is the headwear along with the breeches. Well, sometimes you do see trousers being used, but most originals that have survived so far, and in photographs, we do see breeches being used. Keep in mind, these are not exactly officer type of breeches. There's like not too much excess material on top of the legs, but ideally we would like to call them breeches instead of trousers, and they do have sometimes knee reinforcements, and sometimes don't. Most of the time they do. At times you even see leather ones being used by stormtroopers. The another piece of uniform clothing we need to talk about is the headwear. The Ottoman army at the start of the war obviously was issued with the kabalak, or enveriye, sun cap. These caps were designed to be used as scarves during winter and obviously a simple sun helmet during rest of the year. Early war models, unlike the one I'm wearing currently, which is actually a late war model, around, technically mid-war, but more common around 1916 onwards, is the early war ones were the ones that were can be used as scarves. These models can't, because they're actually stitched on to keep the shape. You can technically undo the stitching and still use them as a scarf, but they're in general shorter when it comes to the folds. And obviously the main idea here is to keep the uniformity, because early on they found out that whenever the soldiers undid their kabalugs, it literally did not look good when they had to wrap it back again, and uniformity was lost. So in militaries, obviously it is very important to have uniformity. Soldiers were obviously also issued winter clothing, but I'm afraid I don't exactly have an authentic reproduction to be used in my reenactments, mostly because no one really makes Ottoman repros. And my objective would be to actually get a German World War I greycoat, because there is evidence of German First World War greycoats being used by the Ottoman army anyways. When it comes to footwear, it is kind of complicated. Ottoman footwear production, just like many other things, is again primitive. A lot of the stuff that was used by the soldiers can vary, from high quality military footwear to simple peasant shoes. But we do also have evidence of foreign footwear being used by the Ottomans. It can be obviously German or Austrian, and sometimes even Russian when it comes, which is really strange, but which makes kind of sense when it comes to the capturing of enemy footwear. There are reports, especially after the siege of Kut, of British soldiers, British POWs and Indian POWs being stripped of their boots by the Ottoman guards, and obviously these shoes would have been issued to soldiers who needed them. Well, yes, the Ottomans did steal footwear from prisoners, and it is quite highly that it was also stolen from the dead, just like we kind of see in the Eastern Front. Obviously the B5 can take the place of any European style footwear because it is simply a boot, so it works. With the B5s, obviously I do have puttees that go along with them. These kind of look khaki on the camera, they're actually more greenish, but then again it's all about shades and different manufacturing procedures. These are Australian puttees. These are actually Second World War period ones, which I modified. I used 2 in order to make a longer one. Ideally you want 3, but I do have skinny legs, but I think I will get another that's in the same shade, so there's matching, because I did actually buy 3, but one of them wasn't in the same shade as this. It was a darker green, so can't really use it. But that one actually works with my Second World War kit anyways, so I'm happy about it. Obviously, you do sometimes even see puttees not being used, and just simple long socks being used by the soldiers. So yeah, footwear is a complicated thing when it comes to Ottomans. Anything from German to Russian is good to use. When it comes to field gear, on the other hand, it's quite simple actually. It's the same as German First World War field gear. Leather ammunition pouches, leather belts. One main difference, obviously, is the usage of a different belt buckle, the Ottoman style, which was introduced around 1909, if the nomenclature is right. Obviously, we don't exactly know when it was introduced, because let's be honest, some of these regulations are not exactly clear, and I only have a single example that has been translated into modern Turkish. Yes, we don't use the Ottoman script anymore, but at least I know what it says on top of the Ottoman belt buckles, which is, the scripture says Asakiri Shahane, which means the soldiers of the Sultan or the imperial soldiers. Well, if you go with the modern translation, it also means the perfect soldier, but I digress. The ammunition pouches, as I said, are the same as German ones. Obviously, the Ottomans did not get any orders to camouflage them, so brown pouches, brown belts, everything brown is good to go. Another nice thing about the equipment is obviously the usage of German bread bags. However, the Ottomans actually used them in a different way, with the bread bag strap being used as it's intended. So it would be not attached to your belt unless you count the middle hook for stabilization. The main strap of the bread bag is what carries it. You simply use the hook to stabilize it around your belt. I know it is definitely different than the German version, but that's what the Ottomans did. Sadly, I don't have an example for an Ottoman bayonet. A friend of mine does, and that's what I kind of sometimes use when I'm in England. I don't have it with me to show you guys, but there you go. Have a photograph of me kind of using it with his rifle as well. But yeah, and that kind of concludes the basic uniform and equipment of an Ottoman soldier. Obviously, you did kind of see the rifle that's being used as well, the Mauser 1903 or the 1893, which is the main Ottoman models. Obviously, you do see the Gewehr 88 and Gewehr 98 being used, but those are mostly late war items. Early on the war, obviously, the Ottoman Mausers are the most common Mausers being used by the Ottoman army. Another thing that I don't actually have for equipment-wise, though, is the haversack or the tornister. The Ottoman tornister is something between a German tornister and a French First World War haversack. And obviously, again, like many things when it comes to the Ottoman reenacting, no one makes a proper reproduction of it. People do use French tornisters slash haversacks, but they're not exactly correct. But there is evidence of German haversacks slash tornisters being used, so ideally a 1915 model would be nice to have. One thing that needs to be taken note of is that the issue of entrenching tools. The Ottoman army was short of entrenching tools for their own soldiers. The Ottomans did have proper long shovels to dig trenches, but the issue with entrenching tools is that a lot of photographs, you don't see them. Obviously, supplies and whatnot are the main issue. There is even writings of Ottoman officers stating they did capture British entrenching tools at Gallipoli to be used by their soldiers. So I just wanted to add that as well.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you take a look at the other videos in this playlist, especially Chess Gammon, where he's going to be talking about why Japan actually joined the war and what they were up to during the time this whole world events were playing out. So I hope you enjoy.